Probably the best episode in all of New Who, or at least in a lot of people's top 10 lists. By the early 2000s, a lot of people forget, Daleks were widely viewed as a joke. So were Doctor Who fans. I mean, look at these idiots. They have big buggy eyes and they made Sydney Newman cry. You can't make these things scary in the modern day. But that is exactly what old mate Rob Shearman did. He managed to undo years upon years of overuse, ridicule, and just uselessness by depicting a single Dalek as a threat to the entire world. Just one Dalek. Truly a fantastic and completely original episode. Yeah, nah, mate. Hello, I'm an Australian and an idiot, and welcome to my first Idiot Reviews Big Finish. I'm going to try and make these audios as accessible as possible by giving you a vivid image of the setting and the locations, and altogether telling you why I think they're worth a listen in the first place. But before I get around to reviewing this for you, we gotta talk about the elephant in the room. That's right, we gotta talk about old Sixie. Cue the inspiration music! The Sixth Doctor is widely regarded to be the least popular incarnation, and when you only watch the TV show, you can understand why. This is a Doctor who from his very first words made himself distinctly unlikable. In his first episode alone, he strangles his companion, has multiple other violent outbursts, insults his previous incarnation, whom people actually liked and only just saw die the previous week, and all while behaving like a pompous, self-obsessed twat. As if that wasn't enough, to rub salt in our tender wounds, he tells his companion off at the end of the episode for not immediately warming to his new persona. I mean, he's just so damn likable. And then he looks directly at the camera and declares that he is the Doctor, whether we like it or not. Can you believe that they weren't actively trying to kill the show at this point? This was the final story of a season as well, so fans had a good 6 months to stew on all this. Overall, Six came off as some bastard who killed the Doctor and stole his TARDIS. And it's really killing me to say this, by the way. Six is my favourite. And that's why I want to make it absolutely clear that none of this was Colin's fault. He's a wonderful actor and he's great for the role. He was let down by the writing, the general direction the show was taking, the showrunner, and presumably mountains of cocaine. The makers of Doctor Who back then were continuing a British institution, and thought that they were completely untouchable, so they just continued writing any old shit, throwing stuff at the wall, seeing what stuck, which made it all the more tragic when they eventually cancelled it. Instead of playing the role for 8 years like he initially wanted to, instead he went down in history as the man who killed Doctor Who. He attended fan conventions, but he was shunned and eventually stopped attending. And when it came time to film a regeneration story, he flat out refused, and rightly so in my opinion. He deserves so much better than what he got, and that's why Big Finish made it their mission to redeem the Sixth Doctor in the eyes of the fandom. And they did this by writing him some amazing stories and letting him actually play the character the way he always wanted to. Isn't it funny that you get good results when you respect your actors? Pairing him with a history professor in her 60s was a stroke of genius. Evelyn Smythe is the perfect counterpoint to the Doctor's dickishness. She's like the best qualities of Donna wrapped in a cardigan. And the angle of a history professor, travelling time and space to view history as it happens, is something I'm surprised the show hadn't done before. Colin Baker's Sixth Doctor had a prolonged period of post-regeneration madness that went on for years, but when he stabilised, in my view he became the definitive version of the character. He's a wanderer, a dreamer, someone who isn't perfect, he can be downright arrogant at times, but underneath all of that bluster, he is kind and pathetic, a man who goes out of his way to do what's right simply because that's the kind thing to do. But he'll also tell you when you're full of shit. He's the character at his most basic level. He's a madman in a box, being camp and travelling around the universe with his friends, having adventures because that's a fun thing to do. He is also a sassy bitch and I absolutely love him for it. Okay, the preamble is over. On with the review! Written by Rob Shearman, Jubilee is widely considered to be one of the best jumping on points for new listeners, even if it doesn't seem like that at first glance. It showcases a lot of things Big Finish do really well. It also has themes and story beats that New Who has been ripping off for years now. The idea of a good Dalek, am I a good man, the concept of the Doctor taking ordinary people and fashioning them into weapons and soldiers so he can keep his image of the man who never would. It's also exceptionally timey-wimey, the kind of story that Moffat creams his britches to, and probably has done so many times given the ideas he's stolen from it. If you look very closely, you can even see the stains. It's also a Rob Shearman play, which means it's horrific, fundamentally disturbing, and very profound. There's gratuitous violence played for horror, oppressive gender roles, and spousal abuse. This is a story that was written by a nerdy neckbeard who's a fan of the show for nerdy neckbeards who are fans of the show and their female and MB equivalents. In other words, it's written for adults. So blanket trigger warning here. Apart from Jubilee, Rob Shearman has done several other plays for Big Finish, including the one with the goddamn shape-shifting penguin, which I highly recommend that you check out. So getting on with things, we open with the Doctor and Evelyn in the TARDIS console room. The Doctor put his foot in it by suggesting that history is useless as a field of study, when you have time travel and can just go back and see what really happened. And putting my philosophy hat on for a second, he has a point. History isn't the past, it's just a version of the past that we choose to remember. Regardless of how accurate the historical account, it has to be written by someone. No time for philosophizing though, they're in the most horrible danger. The TARDIS appears to be trying to land in two places at once, seemingly ripping the ship apart. Realising the danger, the Doctor rushes the both out, but the TARDIS dematerialises, leaving them in 2003 London, where the Doctor promptly forgets its danger and becomes very interested in their surroundings. They have landed in the chapel of St. John the Evangelist in the Tower of London, but something is wrong. This is usually a major tourist spot, but the place is dusty as all hell, as if not a soul has been there in years. They start looking for the TARDIS and instead find a stained glass window depicting the blue box on a green hill, with flecks of red everywhere as if the hill is being torn apart, causing the Doctor to have a freak out and pass out, only to wake up and forget that he was worried about something. Heading outside, they discover that London looks nothing like the London of 2003. The buildings look different. Some destroyed, others standing, but decaying in disrepair, and all painted garish colours. Every surface of every brightly coloured building on every street is covered in decorations and coloured bunting, as if not to decorate, but to hide the rot under the surface. They also discover that an out-of-place extra room has been plonked onto the side of the tower, a metal structure that's out of sorts with the ancient masonry of the tower. Meanwhile, in the metal structure, two men are trying to get a prisoner to talk. This chap hasn't talked in many years, but must be convinced to talk by the Jubilee, and he will be convinced to do this by any means necessary. Ooh, that sounds very familiar. I wonder who it is. The Doctor and Evelyn hear the prisoner's cries of pain and come to the creature's aid, only to be stopped at the door where they can track their words a lot and reveal their names. They are immediately taken to the President of the British Empire, who thinks they must be imposters, and he really wants to know how they knew about that coat! So they propose a test to prove who they are. They take them down to the prisoner, where to their astonishment, this happens.
Hello? Is there anybody in here? Speak to me!
Doctor!
Oh no!
Doctor! You are an enemy of the Daleks! You are to be exterminated!
No! Wait!
Exterminate! Exterminate!
But you can't, can you? You can't hurt me at all.
Identity verified, they are welcomed as honoured guests and learn what the hell is going on. Apparently in 1903, the Daleks had launched an invasion of Earth that was thwarted by the Doctor and the British Empire. Strengthened by victory and adapted technology, the British Empire just never stopped. They stormed across Europe, taking the world by force. They travelled across the Atlantic, invade, subjugate and humiliate the former United States, something that I heartily approve of as a member of the Commonwealth. And learning from the Daleks, they emulate them and absorb the Daleks into their pop culture the same way we have done with the Nazis after World War II. They used to sell practically anything, from soap to lemon squash. Women emancipation never got off the ground, and women are reduced to battered housewives. And they have one last Dalek prisoner, which they have been torturing for a century, along with another prisoner you may recognise in the Bloody Tower. He has a wheelchair. There's also something very strange going on with the Doctor. It's as if when the TARDIS tried to land in two places at once, it tore him and the ship apart. And it's as if the two copies themselves are in the war of 1903 and in 2003 simultaneously, and it's all happening at the same time. The world building in this is nothing short of vivid. Shearman paints a very bleak yet colourful alternate future, like Rome at the height of its decadence, led by a corrupt, suspicious and insane emperor. The city of London is a colourful shadow of itself, all painted in garish colours. Half of the buildings are in decaying disrepair, and the other half in ruins. Not from the Daleks, but from a previous leader who wanted to bomb London to the ground and build a new city from scratch, only to completely lose interest and leave the citizens without any housing. The people themselves are kept complacent by bread and circuses, like big, bombastic, explosive executions, Dalek theme parks and Dalek movies. The Doctor is an action hero in this universe. The people of London both love and hate the Daleks with a strange fascination and an unquenchable bloodlust. Children are brought up being taught that they are the superior race while keeping themselves completely ignorant of how bad they actually have it. The president and his wife are both completely insane, like completely off their rockers. One of them desperately wants to be a good person, yet he constantly commits horrible acts, and deals with the guilt by telling himself that it's all an act. He's convinced that the Dalek is controlling everyone except for him. The president's wife is subjugated like most women, but that's okay, she's living her best life, telling off the American Prime Minister for being American and therefore inferior. She has her love of coloured bunting, makeup, being bashed by her husband, which is good because that's her other fetish. I'm not even joking. If you listen to the audio, you'll understand what I'm talking about. Like in Dalek though, the Dalek is the real star of this story. The really interesting thing about him is he isn't a general, he isn't any sort of command, he's just a normal Dalek, he's a drone. He's just a soldier who follows orders, yet hasn't received any for a century. His desperate desire for someone to just tell him what to do is such a cry for meaning, and it just makes you really feel for him. Like in Dalek, a relationship develops between the companion and the Dalek, yet it develops a lot more interestingly than with Rose just touching the Dalek and it being infused with her DNA. Instead, the Dalek is changing all on its own. He's suffered more pain and had more time to think than any drone Dalek was ever supposed to have. And has become quite insane and torn between his respect for Evelyn, who spoke to him like an actual person, like a thinking, emotional being, and his loyalty to his race. All of this leading to the final end, which is far more profound and consequential than the TV version. This is a story about history and what we choose to remember, and the evil that we are all capable when we remember the wrong things. Take the British people for example. They defeated the Daleks and wound up emulating them and becoming just like them, subjugating the entire world, proving superiority through strength and maintaining English racial purity above all else. People who in our timeline would have been doctors, grocers, shop attendants instead become monsters, baying for blood and capable of the worst possible atrocities. In the right circumstances, humanity is and has been far more horrifying and far more evil than any space squid in a tank. But Daleks are a species that were genetically modified to fear, hate, and destroy anything that isn't Dalek. What the hell is our excuse? It's the kind of story that makes you have a bloody good think. It makes you sad, but in a very productive way, while being funny and entertaining as all hell. It's really a good listen, and I highly recommend that you check this out. This story is a dark masterpiece, and there's a very good reason why New Who writers keep ripping off its themes while never actually holding a candle to it. The only criticism I can give this is, it's only a tiny one. For a story about an alternate future where the British Empire owns the world, there's nowhere near enough robot mech suit battles. And that's about it. Sorry if I spoiled too much. This is my first time ever doing a review, but I hope I got you interested. Check it out. You can get this one on Spotify, you can get this one on the Big Finish store. This one is very cheap. It's one of their oldest ones in the monthly series, and I highly recommend that you check it out. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and click the bell, and thank you everybody who's shown so much interest in my channel so far. I honestly didn't expect anyone to be interested, except for people in my immediate family. I mean, one of the people listening to this is my mum. The next video will not be a review, it's going to be a critique / fixing of Orphan 55. I mean, I absolutely hate that episode, I'm kind of obsessed with it, so yeah. Going with a J&T method for this channel, sort of scattergun, throw everything at the wall method, see what sticks. And yeah, I'll see you next time.